Hi to all. We will start this class talking about the survey that we conducted on languages and emotion, a study on multilingual families. We performed this study with our team from University of Palermo, and I am Antonella D'Amico. The other partners, the other components of our team are Cinzia Novara, Elisabetta Di Giovanni, and Consuelo Serio. The participants to this study were 44 couples of parent-child families, parent-child couples, coming from multilingual families. The children were 30 females and 14 males, age range 6-15 years. The parents were 41 females and 3 males, age range 28-54 years. The families come from 25 different countries, so all the partners in the project interviewed the family, and we collected the data from all the partners in order to make our analysis. So as you can see in the graphic, there are a lot of country origins, and another interesting information are the reasons of travel. As you can see, many people came to another country, moved from one country to another for work reasons, is the gray region of the graph. A little bit of them also for war reasons is the green part of the graph, and another part of them moved for marriage reasons is the red one part of the graph. The interviews were performed using different materials and procedures. We used a semi-structured interview aimed at accessing the family background, the language usage, the frequency in the language usage, the language skills, competencies, the use of languages in different situations and the relative moods, the language emotional portrait, the color and bodily representation of language, and the language learning and mood timeline. I will show you some examples of these tools. We performed different analysis on the data we collected. We performed quantitative analysis on language usage, language skills, use of language in different situations and relative moods, and language emotional portrait. And as we will see later, we performed qualitative analysis on family background. Let me show you the different aspects of the interview. Language usage was a structured questionnaire in which we asked people how often they use each language. For instance, many people spoke 2 or 3 languages. So for each language we have to say how often they use that language in daily life. For the language skill competencies, it was again a structured interview in which people had to say the level of competence that they feel to have in each language. And in this case, we had 2 versions of the tool. One version was for parents and one version was for children. But parents had also to assess skills and competencies of their children. And so for each language, we can have a rating of skill and competence. Another aspect of the interview was the use of languages in different situations and relative moods. So in this case, you see that there are different pictures indicating a different daily situation, such as for instance, homework or during the dinner, or when visiting friends or parents, or during playtime, or for the bedtime, and so on. So for each situation, children and parents were asked to rate, to tell which language they prefer to use, and also which was the mood that using that language comported. I mean, for instance, I use English during homework, and I'm happy about that, or I'm use English during our work, and I'm not happy at all about that. So it is important not only which language you use, but also the mood that you feel when you are using that language. Another part of the interview, very nice one, very appreciated from children and also from parents, was the language portrait. In this case, each participant had white human figure, and they have to color the different parts in the body of the figure, which with different color that they assigned to each language. So, for instance, in this picture, you can see that we have the blue for the Italian language, the light blue for the English language, the green for the French language, and the red for the Chinese language. And then the different parts in the body of the figure were colored with the different colors assigned to each language. So in this case, you can see that for this person, the Italian language was in the head, but the English language was near to the heart. So in terms of emotion, it is a very interesting information. And another interesting information that it has the French and the Chinese language were in the legs. And in this case, when we asked to this participant to explain why she posed the different colors in this part of the body, in this case she was a child that told us the Italian language is in my head since I study. When I study, I use Italian language. But the English language is the language of my mother's family, so it is about my grandfather, grandmother, my other family. And the French and the Chinese language is in the legs because I hope to be able to learn this language very well and to have the opportunity to travel all around the world with my legs. So it is really an important information about the emotions that are nested to the use of each language. We performed some descriptive analysis about the use of languages, and we compared the different language. L1, L2, L3, L4, L5 are the different languages that were listed by persons. What we can see is that the language 1 and the language 2 are always the most frequently used, and they both from parents and from children. And the most frequently used languages are also the languages in which people feel to have more competencies. So the frequency of use is higher for language 1, but also the competence in read, in write, in speaking, in understanding is for language 1, both for parents and for children, and it is followed by the language 2, and so on for the language 3, 4, and 5. when we examined what happened in order to the language domains and related moods, we can see that again, the language one is not only the most frequently used, but also the ones that he used with more positive moods, because the higher score in this table represent also all the times that people said that they were happy to use this language. So, for instance, during homework, watch TV, playing, dinner, visiting friends, conversation, social media, visit family, bedtime, dreaming, they always rated the language one as the most used, the most frequently used, and also the ones that they made them feel happy, followed by the language two and from the other language spoken. And other interesting results come from the analysis of language portrait. In this case, we compared just the language 1 and language 2, and all the numbers that you see in the picture represent the numbers of times that each language was placed in a particular part in the body of the figure of the picture. So if you can see that, for instance, language 1 was placed 56 times in the head, and the language 2 was posed 54 times in the head. And for instance, if we just take the description of head and heart, that are the two parts that are more important for learning and emotion, you can see that language 1 is placed 49 times in the head, and language 2 33 times in the head. So identity and emotion are really more nested to language 1, that is placed in the head. So what do you need for life, for work, for study, and so on? But it is also placed on the heart. So what you feel about this language is really important. And other very frequently chosen part of the body are, for instance, the hands, because many people answer that they place the language in the hands, since, for instance, they write using this language. So you have 30 times for the language 1 and 34 for the language 2, and so on. In total, you see that language 1 is more frequently placed in different parts of the world, of the body, that language 2, and then it is followed from the other languages. Another interesting result referring the language portrait is the colors that people choose for the language 1 and 2, because in this case we saw that language 1 and 2 were associated more frequently to what we call the heart colors. I mean colors like red, pink, rose, violet. So there are colors that quite universally are considered as the colors of more intense passion, like love, pleasantness, attachment, and so on. So in this case, you see that all this part of the graph is, in this case, a big portion of people choose these colors for language 1, and again, a big part of people choose this color for the language 2. As I anticipated, Another aspect of analysis referred to the family background. In this case, we use qualitative method and qualitative analysis, since the family background was an interview, an open interview. We had open questions like that. For instance, we asked people what it was the family history, what journey they have had physically and emotionally, if have there been major events affecting their lives, what implication has this had on their sense of home and where they feel they belong. Because people, families that experience migration maybe can live for several years in a country, but they don't feel at home never. So it is also important to understand which is the mood and the emotion about the country, the country in which they live and the country from which they arrive. We also asked to what extent have they been made to feel at home in their local community, what implication has their journey on family relation, immediate and extended family, and what is their current situation in terms of housing, employment, unemployment, training, schooling, and etc. So we can have our aims in this analysis was to discover a grounded view, so to understand if there was some aspect in the migration history, in the pleasant and pleasant emotion, attitude toward languages, in strategies for coping with diversities, and in construction of identity that may have affected also their learning of language. We used, for analyze this qualitative data, we used the software package Atlas T8, and we made different analysis. In this case, the grounded model foresee that we examine primary documents. Independent judges make quotation about the information that they read in the primary documents. Then a series of codes are created, and each code is classified in Niger codes and then in super codes. Let me to show you what we found in our analysis. Oops. Fermati un attimo, perché ho fatto visto che sono tornata indietro, quindi aspetta, cosa facciamo?
Inizia dove vuoi.
Da dove vuoi, infatti, ricomincia da dove vuoi, non ti preoccupare.
Allora, quella precedente a questa
l'avevo finita e quindi poi ho fatto questo fare avanti e indietro perché
forse la precedente a questa scompare la freccetta, non compare precedente. Questa è dalla freccetta in poi si è andata un po' in
ok.
Per cui...
Sì, perché è stata questa che mi ha fatto, che ho fatto 2 volte.
Sei a 18 minuti.
Ok, sì, penso che ci siamo. Ok, let me show the results of qualitative analysis. We classified the family background in 2 big parts: the negative attitudes, and then we will see the positive attitudes. For negative attitudes, we saw that there were different aspects that were grouped in 4 big groups that were obstacles for integrating with the hosting community and also for learning the language. One was in the group of difficulties, difficulties with integration, separation from extended family, learning, forced migration. Another group was the attitude versus the host community, and the other one was the unpleasant emotion about hosting community and new language, and the other one was the linguistic education. We can see each one separately. For instance, in this case, if we look at unpleasant emotions, we can see that you can have here an example of each sentence that was coded during the interview. For instance, about regret, people said, one of the interviewed persons said that she regrets that she has forgotten Dutch. So, for instance, in some case, when you learn a new language, you also have a regret that you are in some way you are forgetting your original language. So it is a reason of unpleasant emotion. Or, for instance, missing friend and family, learning the language, she was really depressed about that. Or, for instance, in terms of cultural shock, she feels a strong sense of loss and sadness and a big initial effort in learning a new language. Or the frustration is in not being able to carry out a conversation with her children in Arabic only, because in this case we interviewing family, parents and children, we have both situations. For instance, in some cases we can have parents that don't speak at all the language of the hosting community, and their children speak better because they go at school in the new community, and the parents never learned the new language. If we look at difficulties, some difficulties can be nested to forced migration, because, for instance, the journey was a difficulty one with different aspects that can have affected also the health of the family. Difficulty with integration or separation from family. So, in different cases, you have multilingual family that are separated. For instance, the wife and the husband are in different countries. So the children lives just with the father or the mother, and so on. For attitude versus host community, we have also a lot of indication, because in this case, in some case, people feel something like a double foreignness. I mean that they not feel to belong either to original and to hosting community, so they don't feel at home anywhere. They feel some hostility in the new country they live, and they desire to leave the hosting country, and so on. Another aspect is about linguistic education. For instance, the mother is a foreigner, it's easier for children to learn a second language. This is what I told before. So in some cases, for instance, if the mother try to help children in homework, for instance, she's not able to do that, because children learn, for instance, Italian language better than their mother, so their mother is not able to help them during homework, because she doesn't talk Italian or other languages at all. So there are a lot of negative emotion and unpleasant emotion also about linguistic education. There are also success factors on multilingual identity. So in this case, we can talk about pleasant emotion. In this case, we have a positive attitude, identity, and linguistic education again. So, for instance, exploring each of them separately. In some cases, people, for instance, Tom usually speak both languages. So, for instance, when a multilingual family is really integrated and parents are able to split, to shift from all the language that they manage. So, for instance, at home they can talk the first and the second language in different situations. This could be a very positive situation, because also children feel that they can move from one language to another without stress. Or when there's an environmental learning that allow children to understand, to be exposed and to learn the new language. Other aspects are the mediation by a second level organization, so the situation in which people are followed, trained also by organizations that have the aim to integrate people in the new hosting communities. So all these aspects are the aspects that can help people to manage the difficulties in integrating in the new countries and to learn and in learning the new languages. About identity. Identity may be influenced, the feeling of identity and the positive aspect of identity may be influenced from different factors. For instance, if you are able, however, to keep a contact with native country, if you perceive the difference in culture between the different culture that your country of origins and the hosting one, but in some cases you can accept both that characteristics, and also, for instance, when you in the hosting community you have the possibility to meet other people from your country that feel you that make you feel at home also in the hosting country. Other positive attitude is, for instance, when you start to change your thinking way due to the new learning, and in this case the sense of host community can be extended to a more feeling to belonging to the hosting country more than your original country. So when the process of integration and the process of learning a new language is really completed, in some cases we can have a really psychological, linguistical, and social integration of people. What we can conclude for our analysis? Results of both quantitative and qualitative analysis demonstrated that emotions are more nested to languages on the basis of competence and usage. I mean that when people become more and more competent in using a language, they become also more confident in using it, and they develop self-efficacy, self-esteem, and pleasant emotion about the new languages. This is demonstrated by the fact that language is indicated as a first language, where the languages in which the interviewed people feel more confidence, they know best this language. The language used in more situations and in the more pleasant mood, and the language most frequently associated to the heart and to the head. It was followed by the second language with similar results. Results of qualitative analysis demonstrated that in order to understand the processes of learning and using new language, we definitely need to take into account family histories, migration histories. The reasons of travel are very important because it is really different if a family had to travel, for instance, for war situation, or just because it was a choice for marriage or for looking for a work and so on. Pleasant and unpleasant emotion they experienced during the travel and during the process of integration to the hosting community are very important, and difficulties with integration and management of diversities and difficulties with linguistic education. All these aspects are really, really important in the process of learning of new languages and in the process of integration. For all the considered reasons, the app Cellest Home that we developed in this project, that was our final aim for this project, is a very important one, since through this semi-structured interview that we realized used a paper pencil method because we was working on the developing of the app, but now it will be available also using a very nice a graphic tool used usable by computer. It could be very useful for all people, for multilingual families, but also for professionals working with multilingual families, because it will be a very useful tool for facilitating people in talking about their family history, to reflect upon their emotion towards languages, to discuss these aspects with other family members, to reflect upon emotion towards languages of the other family members. In many cases, when we interviewed the family, we saw that they had the opportunity, sometimes for the first time, the opportunity of talking about their emotion in learning new language and their emotion about languages. They never talked about that in families, and for them, and we saw that for them it was really an important experience. So using the Cellest at Home app, we are sure that many professionals and many family will have an advantage in order to learn and to develop more pleasant emotion. All that could facilitate the process of integration, inclusion, and the developing of a sense of belonging to the hosting community, the development of pleasant emotion toward language, and an improvement in learning of language of hosting community. We are convinced that all these aims are very important for our society, for let our society becoming more and more inclusive, more and more multicultural, because it is the sense of the period in which we are living. Thank you.